Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I'm going to show you how you can make this quilted lunch tote using scrap materials and some easy step-by-step instructions. And you can make it to fit whatever lunch containers you have. I have my easy lunch boxes in here. These are my favorite. I just love them. And they actually just came out in brand new colors, which are really, really cool and funky. And this box we're going to make actually will hold 4 of these. Now here is the container that comes from Easy Lunchbox, and I love these, except I got 3 kids and a husband, and these don't always make it home again. Or maybe more than one kid wants to take their lunch to school, so having some extra options is really nice. But I'm going to give you a chance to win this cooler bag and a set of 4 Easy Lunchboxes on my blog, so make sure you check out the video description for all the links to Easy Lunchboxes and to my blog where you can win some. So without further ado, let's go to the table. I'm going to show you how easy it is to make this, and it's going to be a lot of fun too. Here are the supplies we're going to need. You're going to need some fabric, some larger pieces for the back of the lunchbox, or the inside of the bag rather, and some small strips for quilting. You're going to need some batting, and if you don't have batting, you could use a piece of fleece. You're going to need a rotary cutter. You're also going to need a cutting mat to use that with. You're going to want pins or basting spray, which is really nice to use. An iron, an ironing board, a sewing machine with thread, scissors, a ruler, and your basic sewing things. The first step is to measure your lunchbox. Mine was about 10 inches by 6.5 inches. I just rounded it up a little bit to make sure I'd have room inside my lunch bag, but you don't need to make it too much bigger because you'll see why in a minute. Now you can see the fabric diagram. The purple fabric is the backing fabric, and that is 1 inch larger on all sides than our quilt batting and our fabric strips. We're going to be doing a quilt as you go project, so that means that we kind of sew all the layers of our fabric together at the same time. So our lunchbox measurement, the width, is the exact same width as our center piece of quilt batting that's going on the large backing fabric. And then all of our strips of fabric that we're going to quilt are the same as that lunchbox width. So all of those strips are going to be 10 inches wide for mine, or however wide yours is. Now the width of the lunchbox is 6.5 inches. That's how wide the quilt batting is on either side. And then however tall you want the lunchbox to be, or your bag to be, is how much you extend the measurement from the lunchbox edges. I hope that makes sense. I think it will as you go on with the tutorial. Here you can see how I have the batting on top of my backing fabric, and then I have the batting on my 2 side pieces. I hope that makes sense and makes it a little bit easier to understand. Now this part is really fun. You get to look through your fabrics and figure out what fabrics you want to quilt with, and then cut them into 10-inch strips. So I'm going through some of my scraps, trimming them down so they're 10 inches wide, and then cutting them into random strips. You don't have to have them all the same. I like a mismatched look, or you could even use a jelly roll for this. Now play with your fabric strips, lay them next to each other, and see what patterns go really great with each other. That way, when you sit down to the sewing machine to start sewing, you'll have a lot of the planning already done. To keep my backing pieces from slipping from my batting, I'm using a product called Quilter's Basting Spray. It's basically a spray-on adhesive that has a light tackiness to it that will keep my layers of fabric sandwiched together nice and secure. After applying a thin coating of basting spray on the back of your batting, you can center it onto your fabric. Make sure you center it on the wrong side of your fabric. You're creating a little quilt sandwich here. After it's all positioned, simply rub your hands over the back of the batting to secure it in place. Now use a basting spray to attach your first strip of fabric to the top of the batting right side up. Now we're ready to sew. Sew along that top edge of your fabric. This is the only strip we're going to be putting down in this fashion. You want to continue sewing until you reach the edge. All of the other strips of fabric are going to be sewn to the bottom of the first strip, but right sides facing together. You'll see what I mean in a moment. Lay the next strip of fabric right sides together down on the previous strip, lining them up at the bottom. Then you simply want to sew along that bottom edge, so it's on the edge that you have not sewn before. All the strips of fabric from now on are going to be sewn on in this fashion. Now, when you take the fabric off of the machine and you open it up, you're going to see that you have a beautiful, clean looking seam, just like I do here. Now, I recommend you go to your iron and you press that flat before attaching the next strip. It'll just make it look a little neater for you. Now keep adding strips in this fashion until you reach the end of the batting. All the strips are added on exactly the same way. Now we're sewing down that last strip, and we're going to open it up and we can see all of our beautiful strips together. But before we do our last step in this row of strips, we're going to want to take it over to the pressing board and iron it back. Alright, now that we have it ironed flat, we're going to top stitch over that last strip. So we're holding it down. So the last strip is similar to the first strip where it's getting stitched down. Now you can see a little bit of the batting poking out there at the end. I just debated whether or not I wanted to put another strip on there, but I decided it would be easier just to trim that batting back a little bit. Now look at all those pretty fabric patterns and colors together. I just love it. Now we need to make our side panels. So we have our backing fabric, our batting, and our front fabric. I didn't bother with strips for the sides, and I had those three secured with basting spray because it just seemed to be a little bit more stable than trying to use pins. And I'm simply going to sew along the edge of my batting sandwich there. I want to get as close to the edge as I can with about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, but just do the best you can. Now we're going to put our quilted pieces together following the diagram I showed you earlier. I will have a copy of this on my blog if you want to print it out for your own reference. Start by laying all 3 pieces with the quilted side down on your cutting mat. Now fold the center piece in half so you find the midpoint. Then fold one of the side flaps in half so you can find the midpoint of that. We're going to be sewing the edge flaps to the middle by the side portions without any quilting. All right, now I've put them so the insides are together and the quilted sides are out, and we're going to be stitching through the thin fabric and not stitching through the batting, and then we'll end up folding over that leftover fabric to create a nice finished edge. You'll see what I mean in a moment. Okay, we've sewn that first side flap on. That's going to be the side of our bag, and you can see now when I open up the seam there, it's nice and neat, and when we tuck under and stitch those down, it's going to be a really nice finished edge. Now flip it over and line up your other piece, and this one's a little bit easier because you don't need to find the midpoint. You can just use the first flap as a guide. Now again, we're going to be going over to the sewing machine and stitching through the thin fabric on the sides, just like we did before. Okay, I wanted to stop and just show you this area right here. I decided I would fold over, and I'll do it right up here so you can see what I did here. I just folded under the selvage edge and I just stitched over it. I did that between these 2 areas, between where the batting is here and where the batting is here. I didn't do this side yet, just so you could see how we can see the batting and the fabric. So what I do is, and this polished cotton, you can kind of crease it. It almost holds the fold like paper, so that makes it really easy if you use this type of material for a backing. I also chose polished cotton because I thought it'd be easy to wipe out if I needed to. And then I'll just fold that down and I'll just stitch as close to the edge as I can, locking in the raw edge. Okay, this is the back side or the inside of our lunch bag. So what we have to do now is sew it together, and I wanted to show you this here because of the way we need to sew it. It's kind of counterintuitive. We're putting wrong sides together. So what I'm going to do is go over to the machine and I'm going to sew these edges together. Okay, that's going to be the next step. So that's how we're going to build our bag, and then we're going to be turning over the leftover fabric to create our binding. Okay, this is the first outside corner that I did. Now, when you get down into the little corners, and I'm going to show you this in a second on the machine, you may end up with a little hole. Now, everything is finished under there, but you will need to go in with like a needle and thread and close that up if you want, or you could leave it like this in case the kids, you know, spill something in the bag. It can kind of drain, a little drainage hole or a little stink hole if they forget their lunch bag in their locker for 2 weeks, a little air, a little hole for the stink lines to vent out. But we're going to go to the machine now. I'm going to show you exactly how I did that. So now you know what it's kind of going to look like. It's a little bit awkward, and if you've been doing a lot of sewing or quilting, you probably have better ways to do this. But I'm a beginner, and I think a lot of you guys are too. So so let's do this together, and it's going to look really cool when it's all done. Okay, here we are at the machine. I've got the edges of my bag. I'm holding them together and I'm lining it up so the batting is right across from each other. And also we've got our corners are aligned and our edges are aligned. So here I want to take my time lining it up on the machine. I want to make sure my needle is going to go in right on the edge, right exactly where the batting stops. So I'm just sewing through that thin layer of fabric on the edge. You can actually get really close into that corner. The only hole I had in that bag was that first corner because I was too afraid to really get in there. So keep that in mind. And also you want to make sure you backstitch into those corners so that way you have a really secure hold there. Now you need to top stitch down the binding. So what I'm doing is I'm folding the binding when I have left for the fabric in half, and then I'm just folding it down over my quilted area, and then I'm simply just going to top stitch it down with my machine. Just try to get your needle to be as close to that fold as you can, kind of on the quilted side, so you lock down all of those layers as you go through. It takes a bit of adjusting. You can see I'm kind of fussing with the bag to get it to lay flat, but it's really not that hard. It just takes a little bit of patience, and you're going to be doing this exact same treatment to every seam on these corners. It's really going to be a lovely bag when you're all done. I also wanted to mention that I've speeded this video up a little bit, so don't think I'm a super duper fast sewer or anything. And there you can see we've got that side all done. Just repeat it for all the other corners. I decided that the top of my bag looked a little sloppy after I had the sides sewn together. So what I did was I took this strip of fabric like this, and I'm just going to swing the camera over to my pressing board here so you can see what I did. I'm also going to show you how I did the handles. So what I did here was for the side up there, for the trim around the edge, I folded this in half and I pressed it. All right, the whole way. And I did it wrong sides together. Please don't mind my coat. It's still chilly down here in the studio. All right, and then you can press it a little bit more. And you know, these I've got some scraps on there, but this is just for an example. And then I pressed in one of the sides like that all the way around. Then I sewed the side I hadn't pressed all the way around, and then it was really easy just to fold over on my pressed part like that, and then stitch down, top stitched on it all the way around, so that I had a really nice finished edge. Now to do the straps, which, you know, it could, if you just, I have all 4 lunch bags in here right now, so you know, it's nice to have the handles like this so I can keep it open and like that. But to do these handles, what I did was I actually took another one of these pieces and I folded it right sides together, pressed it, and stitched all the way down, and turned it right side out, and then that's how I made the handles. I just sewed it on with zigzag stitches back and forth just to make sure it was super duper strong. Now another option that you can have for finishing this, like say you didn't want to be able to carry so many bags, you can always put like a little bit of Velcro on the inside, or a zipper, or whatever you feel like for closing it. But I like having the option of having it open. Plus, because of the way I made it, it's actually reversible, so I can turn it inside out and it's still a decent bag either way you want to look at it. So it's a very versatile bag. I don't know if I would bother quilting it next time, or maybe I'd even use like a thinner material for the quilting instead of the thick batting, but it should keep the contents cool or hot a little bit longer. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll put a link below the video to easylunchboxes.com. Also make sure you check out my blog, because I will have a giveaway for a set of easy lunchboxes, as well as the actual cooler that they sell, which is totally awesome. Just so my kids tend to leave them in their lockers, and I need extras. So now you get projects, you can make some extras, and you can get the tote that they make to go with it too. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Until next time, happy crafting.